Daf Yomi, tractate Zevachim, page 25. A, top of the page with the words Ul Rabbi Shimon. Ul Rabbi Shimon, de la boy kiddush kometz. Ul ba damar Rabbi Shimon ami boy kiddush kometz mismolach shoyin mechshar. Yad yad de Rabbi Lamali. The Gemara asks, and according to Rabbi Shimon, who does not require sanctification of the handful, or according to the one who says that Rabbi Shimon also requires the sanctification of the handful, but that he deems the sanctification fit when performed with the left hand, why do I need the verbal analogy of Rava between hand and hand? If one suggests that it is necessary to indicate that the removal of the handful itself must be performed with the right hand, this cannot be, since that is derived from the verse cited by Rav Yehuda, son of Rabbi Chia. As Rav Yehuda, son of Rabbi Chia, says, what is the reason that Rabbi Shimon does not require that the handful be sanctified in a service vessel? As the verse states with regard to the meal offering, it is most holy as the sin offering and as the guilt offering. Leviticus 6:10. Ba le'ovda biyad, ovda biyamin kachatat, ba le'ovda lechli, ovda bismol kashya. The verse compares the meal offering to a sin offering and a guilt offering. Therefore, if the priest comes to perform the burning of the handful with his hand, then he performs it with his right hand, like a sin offering, whose blood is sprinkled by hand. And if he comes to perform it with a vessel, meaning, if he first sanctifies the handful in a service vessel, then he may perform it with his left hand, like a guilt offering, whose blood is sprinkled from a vessel, since the removal of the handful is performed by hand. The verse indicates that it must be performed with the right hand, and the verbal analogy is unnecessary. Lo nitzracha ela lekometz mincha chote. So kedai techamina hoyel amar Rabbi Shimon shelo yehe karbano mehudar. The Gemara responds, the verbal analogy is necessary only for the handful of a meal offering of a sinner to teach that it must be removed with the right hand. It might enter your mind to say, since Rabbi Shimon says that this offering does not require oil and frankincense, so that his offering will not be of superior quality. Perhaps when he removed the handful with his left hand, which is in an inferior manner, it should not be fit as well. It should be fit as well. The verbal analogy therefore teaches us that the handful must always be removed with the right hand, even in the case of the meal offering of a sinner. That concludes the Talmud for this portion, for this Mishnah, and we move on to a new Mishnah. Nishbach hadam ala ritzpah. Mishnah says, if the blood spilled on the floor before the priest managed to collect it into a vessel, and the priest then collected it from the floor into a vessel, it is disqualified. Okay. That's the whole Mishnah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 words, the whole Mishnah. Nishbach hadam ala ritzpah yasafo pasul. If the blood spilled on the floor, and then he collected it, put it into a vessel, it's pasul. It's disqualified. The Gemara. Zok the Gemara. Ton Rabban. V'zok the Mashiach. Midam haba. Midam hanefesh v'lo midam ha'o. Lo midam ha'tamtzis. The sages taught, the verse states, and the anointed priest shall take from the blood of the bull, Leviticus 4:5. This means that the priest shall take from the blood of the soul, meaning the blood that flows from the place of slaughter as the animal dies. So as the life is leaving it, that blood, very interesting. Maybe it has a different energy, different. There's more life force in it when it comes out. Okay, it's my own commentary, but basically what it says here is that the priest must take the blood of the soul, the blood that flows from the place of slaughter immediately as the animal is dying. As it dies, then that's where the blood should be collected from, but not from the blood of the skin, which bleeds out when the skin is cut before the slaughter, nor from the blood of exudate, meaning that exudes from the neck of the animal after the initial spurt of its slaughter concludes. Has to be from the initial spraying spurt of the slaughter, and not if it just is pouring out afterwards, after it's already dead. Wow, very graphic. Midam apal, dam me'apal yekablenu, di solidarizet midam apal, dichtiv. Midam, ואפילו מקצת דם, ואומר הרב השוחט צריך שיקבל את כל דמו של פר, שנאמר, ואת כל דמו ישפוך. The Brayta continues, when the verse states from the blood of the bull, it should be interpreted as if it is written, he shall collect the blood from the bull, meaning the blood spills onto the floor before it is collected in a service vessel. It is disqualified, as if it enters your mind that from the blood of the bull should be interpreted as it is written, meaning from the blood of the bull means that the priest may collect even only a portion of the blood that is difficult. But doesn't Rav say one who slaughters the offering must collect all the blood of the bull, as it is stated, and all the blood of the bull he shall pour out on the base of the altar, Leviticus 4:7. The verse emphasizes that the priest must pour all the blood of the bull, which is possible only if he has collected all of it. Ella, b'dam apal, dam apal yekablenu, v'kasov agorim, u'mosifim v'darshin. Rather, from the blood of the bull means that the priest shall collect the blood from the bull, and this sage holds that the sages subtract and add and interpret homiletically, meaning one may take a letter from one word, insert it into a second word, and explain explain the phrase in that manner. In this case, the mem of midam is added to hapar, so that the verse interpreted as though it said dam me hapar, meaning blood from the bull. Dam me hapar, meaning blood from the bull. Gufa Amar Rav Yehuda Rav Asher yitzor shikabel es damo shel par שנאמר ואת כל דם הפר ישפוך והווה שיריים כתיב. The Gemara returns to the matter itself. Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, one who slaughters the offering must collect all the blood of the bull, as it is stated, and all the blood of the bull he shall pour out on the base of the altar. The Gemara asks, but isn't this verse written with regard to the remainder of the blood that is poured onto the base of the altar after the sprinkling? How then can a halacha with regard to the collection of the blood be derived from it? Im eno inyan l'shirayim teha leite l'chulei dam teneo inyan b'kabbalah l'kabbalah. In brackets it says l'kabbalah, right? L'kabbalah, parentheses. The Gemara responds, if this verse is not referring to the matter of the remainder of the blood after sprinkling, as not all of the blood is present for that rite, since some of it has already been sprinkled, apply it instead to the matter of collection of the blood from the animal. Amar Yehuda Shmuel Ashoritzor Shigabi Asakin Lemala Shinema Balagach Midam Mapal Vilo Midam Mapal Vidavachel. Yehuda says that Shmuel says one who slaughters the offering must hold up the knife after the slaughter so that blood is on the knife. The blood that is on the knife does not fall into the service vessel, as it is stated, and the anointed priest shall take from the blood of the bull, meaning, and not from a mixture of the blood of the bull and something else, such as the blood from the knife. Vidam sakin b'mayim kanachle, amar habaye b'svat mizrak, dichsiv keforei zahav. The Gemara asks, with what does he wipe the blood from the knife? Abaye says he wipes it with the rim of the bowl used to collect the blood, as it is written of the bowls used to collect the blood. Atoning bowls of gold, Ezra 1:10. The root kaf pe resh can also mean wahipe. Amar Rav Chizda Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Ashochet tzarich sheyiten. Rav Chizda says that Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says one who slaughters the offering must place. Now we turn to 25b, top of the page. Veridin letochakli, the veins of the offering into the vessel. Itmanav Yamaravas Yamarav Veridin tzorich shiru avir kli. So that all the blood will empty into it. It is also stated that Rabbi Asi says that Rabbi Yochanan says the veins must see the airspace of the vessel. Return after a brief break. Weiter on Amid Beis. Right. Boimine Rav Asi mi Rabbi Yochanan. Hai Makabel v'niftachu v'nifchatu shulei mizrak עד שלא הגיע דם לאוויר מהו האוויר שאין סופו לנוח כמנוח דמי או לא כמנוח דמי. Rav Asi raised a dilemma before Rabbi Yochanan. If the priest was collecting the blood and the bottom of the bowl broke before the blood reached the bowl's airspace, what is the halacha? Is blood that enters the airspace of a bowl that will not ultimately allow it to settle inside, nevertheless considered as though it settled into... Wait, I don't get this. The bowl broke before the blood reached the bowl's airspace. Is the blood that enters the airspace of a bowl that will not ultimately allow it to settle inside, nevertheless considered as though it settled inside the vessel, so that when it spills through the break, it is considered to have already been collected in the bowl? If so, it remains fit for sprinkling. Or is it not considered as though it settled, but instead considered to have spilled directly from the animal's neck onto the floor, and it is therefore disqualified? Interesting. Amar lei tenei tuha chavit shemunachat tachat azinuk מים שבתוכה ושבחוצה לה פסולים. צרת פיה לזינוק, מים שבתוכה פסולים, ושבחוצה לה כשארים. Rabbi Yochanan said to him, you learned the answer in a Braita. With regard to a barrel that is placed under a pipe to catch water from it, both the water that has already flowed inside the barrel and that which is still outside it but about to fall in are unfit to be used as water of purification, which purify one who contracts impurity from a corpse. The water of purification must be flowing water, and all of this water is considered to have been collected in the barrel. But if one joined the mouth of the barrel to the pipe, the water that is inside the barrel is unfit, but water that is still outside is fit, even though it will ultimately fall in. And since it is still in the pipe and is not considered to be above the airspace of the barrel, one can infer from the Braita that all liquid that enters the airspace of a vessel is considered to have been collected in it. Hai mai bai mine avir shein sofer lanuach mikapashet leavir shesofer lanuach. The Gemara rejects this. What is this comparison? Rabbi Asi raises a dilemma before Yochanan with regard to a case where an item enters the airspace of a vessel that will not ultimately allow it to settle inside. And Rabbi Yochanan resolves the dilemma by citing a case where the item enters the airspace of a vessel that will ultimately allow it to settle inside. Okay. That will not. Okay. Rav Asi's case is where it won't ultimately settle inside. Rabbi Yochanan's case is that it will ultimately settle inside. The Gemara responds, Rabbi Asi raises two dilemmas before Rabbi Yochanan. First, what is the halacha with regard to an item that will not come to rest in the vessel? Second, if you say that an item that enters the airspace of a vessel that will not ultimately allow it to settle inside is not considered as though it's settled inside the vessel, what is the halacha with regard to an item that enters the airspace of a vessel that will ultimately allow it to settle inside? Rav Yosef masni hachi, Rav Kana masni, chavit ba'amine upashat le chavit. The Gemara notes Rav Yosef teaches the exchange in this manner, meaning as recounted. Rav Kahana teaches it as follows. Rabbi Asi raised the dilemma before Rabbi Yochanan with regard to a barrel, asking whether the water in its airspace is fit to be used for the water of purification, and Rabbi Yochanan resolved the dilemma for him by citing the Braita, mentioning a barrel with which he was unfamiliar. Rabba masni chavit ba'a mine ufishat le mizrak iatamode b'mizrak she'efshar lo b'lo zinuk. Rabba teaches the exchange as follows. Rabbi Asi raised the dilemma before Rabbi Yochanan with regard to a barrel, and Rabbi Yochanan resolved the dilemma for him by citing the halacha concerning a bowl used to collect the blood in the temple, saying, do you not concede with regard to the bowl that it is impossible to collect the blood in it without a stream of blood flowing through the air from the animal's neck? If the air above the bowl is not considered part of the bowl, the blood would be considered to have entered the bowl from the air above rather than directly from the animal's neck, and all collected blood would be unfit. Therefore, the airspace must be considered part of the bowl. And the same holds for the barrel with regard to the water of purification. Tanan hatam natan yado raglo ale yarakos כדי שיעברו מים לחוביס פסולין, עלי קרנים ועלי אגוזים כשרו. זה הכלל, דבר המקבל טומאה פסולין, דבר שאינו מקבל טומאה כשרים. The Gemara adds, we learned in a mission elsewhere in Parah 6:4, with regard to sanctifying the water purification, if one placed his hand or his foot or vegetable leaves in order to allow flowing water to pass through them to the barrel, or the water is disqualified. But if the water passed through leaves of reeds or leaves of nuts, the water remains fit. This is the principle. If the water passes through an item that is susceptible to impurity, it is disqualified. If it passes through an item that is not susceptible to impurity, it is fit. But no, honey, really, how do we know these things? From where do we know these things? As Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Abba, the verse states, nevertheless, a fountain or a cistern wherein is a gathering of water shall be pure. Leviticus 11:36. The verse indicates that their being must be by way of purity, meaning the gathering of the water must not be accomplished by way of items susceptible to impurity. Rabbi Chia says that Rabbi Yochanan says, since this Mishnah states that water that flows over one's hand through the air into the barrel is disqualified, that is to say, that the airspace above a vessel is considered as though it were part of the vessel itself. If it were not, the water would not be considered to have flowed directly from the hand to the vessel, but rather from the air above the vessel. Since air is not susceptible to impurity, the water would not be disqualified. Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Chia, but perhaps the Mishnah is referring to a case where the water flows weakly straight from the hand into the vessel itself, since the hand is situated directly on the edge of the vessel, with no air separating them. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to him, imbecile? That's not nice. Imbecile? Tarada. We learned in the Mishnah. This is what I mean. This is unusual stuff. Why do you gotta say imbecile? Imbecile. We learned in the Mishnah, in order to allow flowing water to pass through them to the barrel. This indicates the water is traveling in a stream and will pass through the air before reaching the barrel. The Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba, the Amar Rabbi Yochanan me'eduto shel Rabbi Tzadok nishnet Mishnah zo detnan. Ha'id Rabbi Tzadok al hazochalin shekirchan bali eglazin shehen k'sheren ze haya מעשה באוהליו ובא מעשה לפני חכמים בלשכת הגוזיס והכשירו. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba says that Rabbi Yochanan says this Mishnah concerning the barrel was taught from the testimony of Rabbi Tzadok, as we learned in the Mishnah, Eduyot 7:4. Rabbi Tzadok testified with regard to rivulets that one diverted by way of a pipe made with leaves of nuts, that their water is fit to be used as water purification. This was an incident in the town of Ohalia, and an account of the incident came before the sages in the chamber of hewn stone in the temple, and they deemed the water fit. Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Zera, Amar Rabbi Zera. Amar Rabbi Atzoirem Ozen Apal V'achar kach kibel lemo pasu Shneimar V'ach Midam Apal Par Shehayakfar. Rabbi Zera says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, I didn't realize that they were that close in time. Rabbi Zera says that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, in the case of one who slits the ear of the bull with a knife after slaughter, creating a blemish, and thereafter collected his blood from the neck, the offering is disqualified, as it is stated, and the anointed priest shall take from the blood of the bull, Leviticus 4:5, by referring to the animal as a bull, even after its slaughter. The verse indicates that the bull must be at the time of the collection of blood, as it already was before slaughter, meaning without a blemish. They weren't asked. We found a source for this halakha with regard to offerings made the most sacred order, since the verse is referring to such an offering. But where do we derive that the same holds true for offerings of a lesser sanctity? Amar Rav Tanya, Set Mizachar Shana, שיהיה תמים בן שנה בשעה שחיטה בקבלה הלכה בזריקה מן העין. תמר לא אמר יהיה כל הביותיו לא יהיו אלא תם ובן שנה. Rava says it is time of bright with regard to the Paschal offering, an offering of lesser sanctity. The verse states, a lamb without blemish, a male of the first year, it shall be for you. Exodus 12, verse 5. Indicating that it shall be unblemished and in its first year at the time of slaughter. From where is it derived that it must be also without blemish at the time of collection of the blood, at the time of conveying the blood to the altar, and at the time of the sprinkling of the blood? The verse states, it shall be, emphasizing that all its happenings shall be only when it is unblemished and in its first year. Yehoshua raised an objection. Yehoshua Omer, כל הזבחים שבתורה שנשתהיה מהן כזית בסוף, כזית חלב, זורך חסדם. Abaye raised an objection to this from Brighter. Rabbi Yehoshua says, with regard to any of the types of offerings that are mentioned in the Torah, from which there remains either an olive bulk or a flesh, or an olive bulk of flesh, or an olive bulk of fat, the halacha is that the priest sprinkles the blood of that offering. Apparently, one may sprinkle the blood even if much of the offering is damaged or missing. Targuma ben Shana. The Gemara responds, interpret the verse as referring only to requirement that the animal be in its first year until after the sprinkling. It may have a blemish at the time of the sprinkling. The Gemara challenges this, but is there any case where the animal is in its first year at the time of slaughter, but at the time of conveying the blood to the altar and sprinkling of the blood, it is in its second year? Rava says that is to say that hours disqualify sacrificial animals, which means one measures the age of the offering from the exact time of its birth. It is therefore possible that the animal reaches its second year before its slaughter and the conveying of its blood to the altar. Amar Rabbi Ami, Amar Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Ami says that Rabbi Elazar says, in the case where the animal is standing inside the temple courtyard, but its legs are planted outside it, if one severed its legs and therefore slaughtered it, the offering is fit, since all of the blood collected in the bowl is from the portion of the animal standing in the courtyard. That's a chiddush to me.